Hi, and welcome to the Fastest Podcast. I'm Dan, and we have Bianca with us today. And we're also joined by a special guest, Sachel Rotge, who competed last season in the India F4. So, would you mind by starting giving us a brief overview on how your season went?
Yeah, of course. Firstly, I would say thank you very much for having me today. I'm really happy to talk to you. And yeah, looking back at the season, I think it's been overall quite satisfying. Obviously, there's the disappointment of not winning the championship and ending up second. But I think that looking back, just maybe say 1 year ago, imagining being in that position in an F4 championship and fighting at the front, winning races, I think that's very, very satisfying. It's a big step forward. And yeah, I'm happy that I've been able to show that the pace was good and that I was able to fight at the front and be in the top players, let's say.
Sure. And throughout the season, you've had highs, you've had lows. What lessons have you learned from competing in F4?
I mean, so much really. I have to be honest, in 1 year of racing, I feel like I've learned more than in every season before. But I would say the biggest lesson I've learned is that a season is really long, right? It's not just one race, and too often I ended up thinking that I need to win this race now because if I don't, I'm going to lose points and it's bad for the championship. Whereas if I'd stayed calmer and accepted sort of losing certain races, knowing that, okay, things can happen in the future, things that you would not expect, then maybe I would have been in a better position. So now let's say I'd be in a calmer mindset, let's say, about everything and not as scared of losing certain races.
Sure. So would you say that this season has kind of built up your mentality going forward in racing then?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just from the first round to the last round, my mentality has completely changed. I mean, obviously, at the last round, I was also comfortable with the car and the championship, my rivals, but it felt so different because in the first round, I remember that when I was not in a great spot during practice, for example, I would just completely collapse, completely lose it. And I mean, I ended up finding a way to still perform, but it was not really smooth, let's say. Whereas in the last round, I was in the same position, but I just knew that it was going to work out in the end, and everything was much smoother. So yeah, it's really, really improved. There's still a long way to go, but it's much better now.
Right. And I think you've made it quite a long way from now to F4 as well, with great accomplishments. But also, I think I would like to know, like, to start from the beginning. How was it for you how did you even get into racing? Was it something your family was involved in? How did it begin?
It's a strange story because my parents aren't into racing. I mean, my dad enjoys it, but not much more than that. And I started pretty late. Basically, I just discovered Formulaone. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. And I just immediately knew that was something I wanted to do, racing in general, car racing. And so when I was 14, I asked my parents to try a go-kart for the first time, which is quite late if you think about it in this world. And we found this team that was close to where I lived, and we had a few tests, and then we ended up racing the championship, and things went on like that. But it was really just discovering it on my own, and suddenly, I just knew that was it.
With that, I would consider that also like a lot of luck as well, because I mean, also it's a very exclusive kind of sport. A lot of people want to get into it, if we're being honest, and then also you just trying it out and kind of like hitting the jackpots. Okay.
Yeah.
Was pretty lucky. And so I want to know from you, like, when you're in the car, what is it that like keeps you racing? Because from the outside, it's like a lot of adrenaline. Sure, it looks exciting, but for you, what is it that keeps you like racing?
It's so many things, but I feel like what I enjoy the most now, because the adrenaline of car racing, unfortunately, slowly you start kind of losing it, right? It becomes a bit of a normal thing. But what I really love is competing against other people. It's improving, it's performing under pressure. It's just the whole sort of act of competition, let's say. That's what I really love, and winning, obviously, and yeah, that's the drive.
So you said when you were younger, you started watching motorsport, and that's what got you into, wanting to race and compete. Who did you look up to as a racing driver? Who were your idols? Who were you like, that's who I want to be in, 6, 7, 8 years time?
That's really difficult because it changed over time. At first, because I was only following Formula One when I really got into the sport, I was rooting for Charles Leclerc because I lived next to Monaco, and he was basically the home hero in a way. And he's an amazing driver, so I mean, it was really cool following him. Now I would say that probably the biggest motivation, or the most inspirational driver in the world, is Max Verstappen. I think, quite obviously, because he's just the best everywhere. He's so impressive, really so impressive. It's absolutely crazy. But I'm not even sure I'm trying to become Max Verstappen, because it's really, he's a really special guy in a certain way, and because my goal for the future is not aiming for Formula One. So now I tend to look at certain endurance drivers like Kevin Est, for example, French racing driver, that are also super impressive into the endurance world. And so that's more the path I'm trying to follow.
Yeah. Sorry. And looking at, you said you had some heroes growing up, but then if there's one quality that you would want to take from someone and translate it to the racetrack, what would it be?
One quality from anyone. Probably the confidence of the great champions in sports like Max Verstappen, but it could also be Cristiano Ronaldo, or any of the big sport champions, or LeBron James, whatever. These guys, they just have this confidence that everything's always going to work out, and that's really impressive.
Right. I feel like you have to believe as well that you are the best in order to be the best, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. Like, I've come to realize that sometimes you're like, no, but I'm not confident because I haven't won yet. But then you need to be confident to win. So you just start to realize that being confident is not about the facts. It's more like just be confident, and that's it.
So how confident are you that you are going to make it to endurance?
That I'm going to make it to endurance, I'm reasonably confident, because it doesn't just rely on me, unfortunately. Because obviously it's a complicated sport. There's a lot of money involved in politics, so it's hard to get in. But confident that I have what it takes to get there, I am confident. Yeah, I know that I can do it.
So you did start growing up watching Formula One. What made you sort of change and want to get into endurance racing?
Well, I think I've always tried to be realistic about it. I loved Formula One, I still do, but it's a very, very close sport. Only 20 drivers in the world, and then it's very hard to get in, right? Most drivers, I mean, yeah, good proportion of drivers at the age of 14, when I started watching, they're already in academies, in the biggest championships. So I knew that it was unrealistic to try and chase Formula One. And so immediately I wondered, well, what can I do then if I can't do Formula One? And the first thing that popped up was endurance racing, right? Because it's not as dependent on age. You can turn pro at a much later age. There's also a lot more drivers. It's not as dependent on your unfortunately on your wallet, like compared to Formula One. So it just seemed like the obvious answer. And then I started following the World Endurance Championship, for example, but all of the main endurance races, and I just realized that it's actually an amazing sport. I think it's just as cool as F1 now, and it might not be as prestigious, but it's really awesome, and I'm really passionate about it now.
I was privileged this year. I was able to go to Le Mans for the first time. So it was a great experience. It's like a festival atmosphere. It's one. Have you ever been live to see any endurance racing?
Yeah, I went to see Le Mans twice, 2022 and 23, I think. And it was just, I mean, it's incredible. The amount of people, the whole city of Le Mans just turns into it's like the whole city just lives for the race, and it's absolutely incredible. And you see the cars in the rain, at night, in the fog. It's incredible.
I mean, oh, you're on your way there. So,
Yeah.
I was kind of like also doing a little bit of digging on your website, and I saw that you have like plans like set out like in the future of how you want to accomplish that. But like, so far, how far along would you think you are? Because you're vice champion in Formula 4, Indian F4. So what's the next?
I mean, best case scenario, I am 2, 3 years away from Le Mans. Worst case could be 5 or 10 years, but there are plans. For the first time, I would say there's a potential path where I know like what steps to take to get there. They depend on the results that we get. So obviously, if we win certain championships, it helps, and if you don't, it kind of it could stop you. But yeah, for the first time, I have this path, and then I think you kind of have to follow the flow. I mean, we have a plan, but obviously we know that things can go in all directions, and I think it's just important to make the right choices and be flexible and be patient.
Yeah. You know, what could you potentially bring from all the experiences you've had in racing so far that could take you to endurance?
From Indian F4, I think quite a lot. First of all, the mentality thing and the mental aspect of everything, that's 100% applicable to the next championships. Like for example, you take Le Mans, okay, it's just one race, it's not a championship, but then you get multiple stints. So it kind of works in the same way of it's okay to have a bad stint. You can still have good stints in the future and still win the race. Then obviously the technique and the seat time that we got in Indian F4 was really great. Basically, we were able to drive the car a lot. So we were able to work a lot on our technique. And I think that's helped me improve my racing ability a lot. And then also, yeah, just the act of being able to race, compare yourself, have battles and everything. It's just car racing, right? It's the same. Even if it's bigger cars, it's still car racing.
I just wanted to touch on your thoughts on actual racing. Now you've mentioned it, that in F1 it is very difficult to overtake at the moment. Obviously, we don't know what the new regulations are going to bring. So can you just maybe explain how in F4 is it easier to overtake? You know, the types of cars you're racing, and you know the battles on track. Are that, you know, how are they? Are they more intense?
Yeah, so F1, the issue they have is that the cars are so fast, they have so much downforce that they create all this dirty air, and it's really hard to follow because as soon as you get behind, you lose a bunch of downforce, so you don't have the same grip and you can't go as fast in the corners. In F4, because the cars are a lot slower and they have much smaller wings, that effect it's pretty much non-existent. Sometimes in fast corners you feel it a bit. If you're close in a fast corner, you feel that the front end tends to be a bit sluggish. You don't have that same sort of bite on the tires, but it's really manageable. Also, the issue with F1 is that the cars are so big, they take so much space on the racetrack that it's really, really hard to make a move, because obviously they take more space, right? So if they shut the door, it's really hard. And yeah, so F4 has been easier in the sense that we don't have this issue of size of downforce. And also another factor that's quite important is we all have the same cars in F4 and the same setup in Indian F4 specifically. And so everyone's on the same playing field, right? We all have the same cars. So it's easier to sort of make that tiny difference yourself. Whereas in F1, take the McLaren in 2025, it was really, really hard to pass them because they're just so fast, right? Even if it's Max Verstappen driving behind, because he has a different car, it's very hard to overtake. So overall, racing in F4, I'd say it's probably easier to overtake. Obviously, it depends on the track. Same for F1. But we've never had races like in F1 where there are zero overtakes, like Monaco. And it's also like it's more simple. We don't have DRS or battery states. In F1, it's also very, very tactical in a way. You have to manage your battery and make sure you stay in DRS and save the tires. In our case, it's just basically go as fast as you can and make the move whenever you can.
Returning to then Formula 4, I saw your stats, and you managed to stay consistently between the top 5 for a majority of the season, which is why you became vice champion this year. And I was wondering, of course, because you also have like other competitors, how did you reach this level of like consistency? What did it take in terms of like training, physical fitness and stuff like that?
There's been quite a few factors. Obviously, physical fitness is important. It's not a physically, I always say it as the performance doesn't come from your physique, right? So like you take sprinters, they run fast because they have strong legs. They also have good technique, but the legs push them forward. In our case, we don't push the car. But being in a good physical state allows you to basically drive the car in an easy manner because you're not sort of out of breath, or you don't have any shoulder aches or anything. And so you're able to focus on the technique. So obviously the physical preparation was really important, and that's something that I take very seriously. Also, I'd say the simulator is a very, very good tool to prepare yourself. It's not exactly the same as driving a real race car, but it's getting closer. And I would say especially about it allows you to train sort of that capacity to adapt to new tracks, to new cars, and to handle battles in qualifying sessions. So the technique might be a little different, but then the mindset that you have on the sim is pretty much the same as you have in the race car. And so that's a really good tool to prepare yourself for these events. And then the final factor I'd say is mental. We talked about it before, the confidence and everything. And that's something that's probably the hardest to prepare for, because first of all, a lot of it is in your nature. Some people are really confident, some are less confident, but there's still some work that can be done. And that's why I worked with a mental coach this season. It's helped me quite a lot, actually, because sometimes you end up having these, I would say, blockages or something in your mind is not quite right. And that person, he doesn't fix it for yourself, but he gives you the keys to actually like sort of finally unlock that door, open it, and go forward in your ability.
Yeah, I can imagine it's so competitive as well. Like I'm a competitive being as well. So whenever I sense I'm losing, I completely lose it myself. So maybe you could pass me the context, but no, I'm kidding. I think also, just combining everything together, it's like maybe like a high pressure environment. Like how do you, let's say after a race with maybe where you didn't have like the results you maybe wanted, how do you decompress from that race and then move on to the next one? What's your ritual? Maybe you have something like that.
I think the first thing when you have a bad race is to just understand why it went wrong. Usually it involves mistakes that you made, and it's important to recognize them. But then the most important thing is to just, let's say, turn the page, right? So we talked about it with my mental coach. I think it was Kobe Bryant used to say, reset. Like if he failed 3 shots, he just say reset and he starts over. He doesn't keep these failed shots in his mind. And I'd say that's the best mentality is, you've done a bad race. Yeah, okay, that happens. Doesn't matter. Do the next one. You'll win. Like if you have the confidence, you can just easily forget about the sort of the failures and just move on. And that's the most important factor, I'd say.
There are loads of young people who want to get into motor racing, and obviously, F4 is an important stepping stone. But for youngsters looking to get into this sport, what advice would you give them?
I have to be honest, I've been able to race in F4 because I've been extremely lucky. But there are still things that we did right that allowed us to get here. For anybody that's trying to get into motorsports, the first thing I'd say is honestly just find whatever you can do, whether that's just the simulator, maybe if you can buy a cheap simulator, try to do that. If you can do karting, do it. And just work as hard as you can to try and be the best what you're doing, even if it's just the sim. Nowadays, there are opportunities to move from the sim to real life, or simply be a professional sim racer, right? So it's important that you take whatever opportunity you have and you focus 100% on it. And then I'd say this is a lesson that my dad taught me. It's that even the smallest opportunities, right? The things that you'd say, "Ah, this is meaningless," are super important. Like I remember he'd say, "Why don't we go to the local rental car place?" I was like, "Wow, why are we doing this? You know, like, come on, we're racing whatever series. We don't need to go there." He's like, "Yeah, but let's just go. You know, why not?" We go and we end up meeting someone, and then we have. So it's really important to be humble in the sense of you need to take in every tiny little thing, just try and see where it goes, and be obsessed with what you're doing, do your best, work hard, and keep believing yourself. I think it's possible if you believe it. Obviously it's going to require luck, but you need to be there when the luck comes, right? If you're not there and the luck is here, you're just not gonna make it.
Brilliant. And what are your next steps coming up now? You know, what are you doing in 2026?
It's not 100% confirmed yet, but I would say it's 99% confirmed that I will be racing it's not a big championship, but it's a championship in France with closed race cars. It's called Midget. They have different championships in Europe, in each country. It's not very well known, but the good thing is um, we have an agreement with this team that they race this car, and they have good deals with, in the future, perhaps Toyota and GT4. And so they've said, okay, we have good deals with them. You can do this championship. It might not be the biggest championship, right? We know you come from F4, so it's not very prestigious. But if you win it, you can win 80,000 euros. And then if you win this championship, we can put you in Toyota and GT4. And that's already a really good step, because GT4, it's, let's say, semi-professional. You can be a professional racer in GT4.
So would you say networking is just as important as results on track?
Yes, and yeah. I was almost going to say networking is more important, but you still need to perform, obviously. But yeah, 50-50, 100% networking is huge, huge.
For the viewers, could you explain the difference between driving in like a open wheel championship to go into closed wheel? You know, what are the differences? And are you going to have to like sort of adapt your driving style at all?
Yeah, so the differences are pretty big. First of all, the most obvious one is visibility and size. When you're in a Formula 4 car, you have pretty good vision around you. You don't see much below because you're seated so low, but then you see pretty well around you. When you get into a closed car, you have a pretty tiny windshield. You usually have, I'm not sure how you would call these, but it's places where you can't see. And the car is much larger, and you're usually not seated in the middle. So vision-wise, it can be a bit weird at first, where you're like, okay, how am I going to drive this? I can't see anything. And then in the driving itself, the difference is mainly that an F4 car is very light, so it doesn't have much weight, and it's very rigid, so the suspension is really hard. And the consequence of that is an F4 car is really, really responsive. As soon as you turn the wheel, it turns. And so if you would like do this, the car would just turn super fast like that, because it's really light and really hard. A closed car is much heavier and it has much softer suspension. So you kind of have to slowly turn, because the car needs to sort of tilt on the outside tires and then it turns. And so if you do this, it wouldn't go like this. It would just like kind of wobble weirdly and just go straight. And so it's a completely different style of driving, because of that, you have to carry the brakes a lot more in the corner, because by carrying the brakes, you push the car on the front tires and you allow it to turn. So if you lift the brakes, you don't turn at all. Whereas in F4, you could kind of turn even if you don't have brakes. And then you need to be slower on the wheel. And adapting to this driving style, I would say my strength is that I've always worked to try and adapt as quickly as I can. On the sim, I actually drive closed cars a lot more than open wheel cars. So I'm familiar with the technique. Obviously, I'm going to have to adapt a little bit, but I've worked on that. On the sim, I love swapping cars all the time, going from F4 to LMP3 and then GT3 and then LMP2. So yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna have to adapt, but I'm familiar with it.
Sounds really cool, actually. And I saw that as well. You do like a lot of, like you spoke about it, that you do a lot of sim racing. Did I read correctly that you also competed in something sim related?
Yes, a few years back, I used to be in a sim racing team. We raced in, I'm not sure how they call these. I think they're called major events or something on iRacing, which is the biggest simulator service. We performed pretty well. I think we finished third or something in a race. I don't remember, but it was a pretty cool race. I ended up stopping doing that because it required sort of a level of commitment in the sim specifically that was not super interesting for me, because the sim is close, as I said, but then to be really fast, you kind of need to become more of a gamer than a racer, or like you need to utilize the flaws of the game. Like the games are not perfect.
Right.
Like for example, a few years back, there were guys that were driving over grass to cool down the tires. You don't do that in real racing scenarios. That would be pretty dangerous. So I stopped competing, but it was cool because it allowed me to meet some people, and you're still doing endurance races, so you get that feeling of waking up at 2 a.m. to take the wheel and stuff like that. So it was cool.
One last question from me. I have to ask because I think as a spectator, I also have like my favorite tracks and stuff like that, and I always ask like from drivers as well, like, what is your favorite track so far to race it?
Favorite track that I've raced, probably Barcelona. It's pretty, I mean, it's not the best in the world, but from what I've raced, it's the coolest. But if I have to take from every track that I know, including the ones I've done on the sim, I think Suzuka is just magnificent, especially if you have high downforce car. The S is crazy. Or Spa, but Spa, it has a few good corners and then some boring ones. While Suzuka is just perfect all the way.
Sweet.
Brilliant. You mentioned Spa. I was a little surprised you didn't mention Le Mans. That's the all-time track that everyone wants to race.
Yeah, so it's probably the most mythic. Well, there's Monaco as well, but it's like one of the most mythical racetracks and crazy sort of aura in the track. But then to drive itself, it's not the most fun. It's fine, but like the chicanes are a little bit clumsy, I think. I mean, they're here for safety, but like pure flow, Suzuka. But then I think Le Mans is cooler in the sense that it has more history and aura.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows Le Mans. It's
Yeah.
You know, they make films about it. It's amazing. I want to thank you very much for your time, and also say good luck in the future in all your endeavours. And you know, hopefully in a few years I'll be tuning into Le Mans and I'll be seeing your name there.
Thank you very much for having me again. It was super cool. I'm happy to share my story. Thank you.